Everyone knows Georgia is special, but the Peach State is really special today because there's an election, and there's also an upcoming special session. Welcome back to the States. Joining us to discuss the latest out of Georgia is the Center Square Associate Editor, Kim Jarrett. Kim, thanks for taking time with us. A lot to discuss about the election today. You're going to have a late night. Let's start with that. What's at stake in this runoff election?
Well, Greg, thanks for having me. There's a lot at stake. We're going to decide who, well, I'm not in Georgia anymore, but I'm a Georgia native. They're going to decide who is the gubernatorial candidate for governor that's going to go against Keisha Lance Bottoms, who beat a crowded field of Democrats, in her runoff, and didn't even in her election. She didn't have to have a runoff. But we have Burt Jones, who was the lieutenant governor, and Rick Jackson, who's a businessman, and they have both been competing for endorsements from Governor Kemp and from Governor Trump. Well, Trump gave his endorsement to Burt Jones before Rick Jackson entered the race in February. And Governor Kemp, surprise on Sunday, shocked a lot of people by endorsing Burt Jones. They've had a history of, being a little bit at odds over some issues in the past. So people were really surprised. And then Donald Trump Jr. on Monday sent out a tweet saying, Rick Jackson's a good guy. He set an example of some things that Rick Jackson had done in the past. And then quickly said in a comment under his social media post, well, this is not an endorsement, but MAGA is going to win whether our Jones or Jackson is elected on Tuesday. So that just was crazy. We also have a U.S. Senate race. Mike Collins, who is a U.S. representative, he's going against Derek Dooley, former head football coach of Tennessee and son of Vince Dooley, who was the athletic director and head football coach at the University of Georgia for a very long time. Trump introduced Collins on Saturday, very last minute, wasn't expected. Kemp has endorsed Dooley. The latest poll from Insider Advantage shows that these races are razor thin close for 48 to 49% in both cases. So it's going to be a long night. I don't even know. I can't even predict if we're going to have any results by in the morning. I don't know.
Well, it's something that every election night, team from the Center Square is watching the numbers come in and getting out the latest. And this is, like you said, a lot at stake here. While Democrats might be sitting this one out for this runoff election, when it comes to who's going to be the Republican candidate for governor, who's going to be the U.S. Senate candidate, these are very important questions all across the country. Talk a little bit more, though, if you can, about what some of the key differences outside of endorsements or pseudo endorsements, like Trump Jr.'s statement, I guess you could call it. What are some of the key differences that these two Republicans looking to become governor are really showing to voters?
So Jackson is a self-made businessman. He grew up in foster care. He uses that as part of his story on the campaign trail. He has pretty much self-funded his campaign, taken no donations. Governor Jones, Lieutenant Governor Jones, of course, he's taken some donations. He's been lieutenant governor for the past 4 years. Before that, he was a member of the state senate. He has accused Jackson of trying to buy the election. There's been a lot of campaign ads that have been competing. If you live in Georgia or even on the outskirts of Georgia, as I do, you see them. Rick Jackson has been saying, okay, he's been throwing all kinds of shade at Burt Jones for corruption, saying, oh, well, he's got business interests he's trying to fulfill by becoming governor. Jackson is kind of like saying, I don't owe anybody anything. Jones is saying, no, he's trying to buy us. I have the experience. I have the backing. He has the Trump endorsement. Now he has the Kemp endorsement. There's been some lawsuits back and forth. Jones is able, under state law, to use what's called a leadership committee to fund his campaign. Jackson sued him over that. Jones has sued Jackson over some campaign ads he said that weren't unfair. It's been very nasty. I think the interesting thing about this is Keisha Lance Bottoms, who's just waiting to challenge whoever in November. She's saying, hey, y'all are already doing the work for me by attacking each other. I don't even have to worry about creating any ads. Y'all made so many accusations against each other. I have all the ammunition I need in November.
Have either of these Republican candidates indicated that they'd back whoever wins, or are we still in that stage, even though it is election day today, that no, they're the ones that are going to win?
We haven't. No, they've not indicated they're going to back each other. It's been. I hate to use the word nasty, but it's kind of like how it's been. They have really been. They Jackson did not show up for the last debate sponsored by the Atlanta Press Club, so Jones had the stage to himself. At the previous debate during the primary, they went after each other's throats, and the other candidates on the stage seemed to go after Jones. Chris Carr, the Attorney General, who was in the race, he was telling Jones, I would investigate you if I wasn't in this gubernatorial race right now. And he went ahead and backed Jackson. Brad Raffensperger, who is the Secretary of State, he's got his hands full right now. He hasn't endorsed anyone. So it's just been interesting to watch the going back and forth, because even in the first debate, you had a bunch of people on stage, but all the attention was focused on Jackson and Jones.
Well, and voters are going to make that decision tonight with the polls closing later on this evening. Be sure to get the latest at thecentersquare.com. Something else, though, Kim, that's happening, making Georgia very special, is a special election. And there seems to be a lot on the plate here for legislators. Where do we begin?
Well, let's start with why they called this special session in the first place. So Georgia elections, there's been a lot of controversy since 2020. So in 2024, the Georgia legislature passed a bill and said, okay, you cannot use QR codes to count ballots. Think of a QR code kind of like that little, thing you see on your groceries that you scan.
Like a barcode.
Yeah. Barcode. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. So they were like, okay, we're going to ban these. Well, they didn't fund it. Neither the Secretary of the State or the legislature gave election officials any guidance as to, well, what do we do now that we cannot use these QR codes? So here we are. We have a special election on July 28th to fill the seat of the late David Scott. He passed away in office. He was a U.S. representative. And the law is set to take effect July 1st. So Governor Kemp said, okay, we're going to have to call a special session and fix all of this right now. So that was the first reason. They also, Kemp had said early on, and I loved your segment with Brett about redistricting. Kemp said early on that he wasn't going to try to redraw district lines before the November midterms, but he has said that lawmakers can redraw the district lines for 2028 in this special session. So they're going to take that on. Then they added a third thing at the last minute.
I feel like my buffet plate is getting a little full at this moment. I've already got two major issues, and now we've got a couple others that are going to be impacting taxpayers.
Well, one of the fuel tax one is already impacted taxpayers. So Governor Kemp and the legislature agreed earlier this year where we're going to do a 2-month fuel tax moratorium. So they cut the fuel tax for 2 months. Well, Memorial Day was coming up, and that fuel tax was set to expire on May 20th. Governor Kemp called it a state of emergency and extended it for 2 weeks. Basically, this legislature is just going to go in there and they're going to rubber stamp it. So that's the fourth issue. Number 3 is a bit more complicated, but could have a big impact on some taxpayers. So you may recall that Georgia was trying to reduce the property taxes, do whatever they could about property taxes during the legislative session. The only thing they were able to pass is a 3% or a rate. They basically were freezing the assessments, not the taxes, the assessments on your property at the rate of inflation. So that's all they passed. But they did say in this bill that cities and counties can pass a special sales tax, and that could be used to offset property taxes. They call it an LHOST. But what they didn't do is, for cities and counties to get this sales tax in place, they have to have a local referendum. That has to be approved by the legislature, and they went out of session. So Kemp added this to the special session agenda. So I think I've seen 1 or 2 communities who are saying we're going to ask the legislature to approve a referendum so we can go before our voters in November and not have to wait until next year when the legislature returns in January. So that was something that Kemp added at the last minute, well, a couple of weeks ago. So there's 4 things they are going to be talking about, and it's going to be very, very busy.
There's going to be a lot going on there, no question. When does special session start?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow? So you've got an election tonight you're staying up for, and then you're going to have to jump into these 4 very complex issues. Well, at least one of them, the gas tax moratorium, that might be rubber stamped, but still a lot of reasons why people need to stay up to date with what's going on in Georgia with Kim and her team. Keeping an eye on that. Greatly appreciate you taking the time here, and get the newsletter for the latest on the the runoff election tonight, and also what's going to be happening with special session by getting the newsletter at thecentersquare.com.